all of this could fail if you are not ready here. M4 is a non-profit initiative offering mind conditioning programs in order to achieve peak performance in sports. Welcome to this brand new video by M4 Mind Skills for Sports. I am Subramaniam Badrinath, a former Indian cricketer, founder of M4 as well. Today we have Mr. Richard Dean, a leading sports psychologist and a consultant at Think Sports Management, all the way from United Kingdom. And he is, a leading sports psychologist. He regularly deals with international cricketers, sportsmen from the NFL, rugby, so on and so forth. He's well versed with communication skills and vastly experienced in the field of sports psychology, basically. Hi, Richard. Thanks for spending this time with us. How are you doing?
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm doing very well over here in England. Thank you very much. And I'm very excited and honoured to be on this call with you today and answering questions about what I do. So thank you for that opportunity.
Of course, Richard, pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have world-renowned sports psychologist working alongside with M4 here. Richard, my first question to you is, of course, about sports psychology. You mentioned in our first interaction that the perception of sports psychology is many people even me, before I played professional sport, I thought sports psychology is probably a series of motivational talks or something. People come and talk and go, but there is definitely more to sports psychology than that, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the view of a series of motivational talks is crafted really traditionally from the media in what has been seen via movies and that type of scenarios. But I'm here hopefully today to say that it's not all about motivational speaking. It's not all about hyperbolic slogans either. I look at sports psychology as much more of an acquisition of mental skills, a strategic element which sets athletes and teams up to perform in the best way possible. So really, I would like to pitch sports psychology and mental skills within that vein rather than the traditionally held motivational speaking type of way.
Of course, I noticed you mentioned the word strategy. So you say it's sports psychology is more strategical rather than talks. So can you throw more light upon what is strategy in sports psychology?
Okay, so when I deal with an individual player, and it could be cricket or it equally could be rugby or football or whatever, I really look in three stages. And the first part of that stage is the individual's perception of the demands that they're going to face. So the individual thoughts they're having, the level of comfort with what is about to be faced. That's stage number one. So I want to get to an idea of what that's like. Secondly, I want to look at the internal response to those thoughts and those demands. So is the person feeling anxious? Are they tense? Does their attention shift from the relevant to the irrelevant? So I need to know about things like their responses to the demands that they're facing. And the third stage that I look into is the behavioral. So what's the behavioral response? How are these thoughts? How are these things that are swirling around the mind affecting the way someone behaves in relation to the demands of that event? So in other words, I need to know what drives behavior in order to find a solution going forward for that individual or that team. And that's really where the strategic element lies. Notice I haven't said much there about motivational speaking. I've veered towards a strategic breakdown of what it takes to perform and what is being faced. And I help people navigate through that.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Richard. That was very clearly explained by you. And from what you say, it seems like it is like a long-standing process, isn't it? Sports psychology. It's not like you just come, work with the team once, okay, interact a few sessions and go away. It's like a process. You stay with the individual or the team over a period of time, and then you can actually see the difference in their performance.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think to bring someone in on a short-term contract and then take them out of the situation again doesn't really do enough to enculturize them within the environment of the team. And if something is not enculturized into the environment of the team, it's probably not availed by the participants in that team in the best way possible. So I would absolutely agree with what you say there, and really have a kind of mental skills approach, a strategic aim, a strategic idea of what this team wants to be. Not all training has to be where you sweat. Training can be equally nourishing off the field, where you're imbuing your mind and nourishing your mind with certain principles that are going to help you on the field of play. Behavioral science tells us that principles and structure helps people to tolerate adversity and difficulty, and therefore one becomes more resilient through the process, or one should anyway, if you're working with the right individual. So I do think you're absolutely right. I do think it should be a constant, and it should almost be embedded into the technical, the tactical, the psychological, all together to coagulate and form a whole of the way a cricketer is, or indeed any sportsman, is developed.
Would it be fair to say that the coach is the integral part of the process, apart from the athlete, to work with a sports psychologist?
Yes, I would, because often if the coach is resistant, either because they don't know exactly what sports psych entails or mental skills entails, but a mental skills practitioner is being forced upon them, you're probably not going to get that person being embedded in the way that I described before. So it's very, very important to get buy-in from the coach. So in order that the coach can almost filter over to the players that this is something of value, it's something of worth, it's something that we will, within our team culture, spend time on, just as well as the technical and the tactical. It's very, very important that it becomes just part of the whole process. An example I can give probably to illustrate it within cricket. I dealt with a player 2 years ago, in fact, a test player.
Ooh.
And this player was having problems with concentration. Now, his problem was actually concentrating too much. Now, that might sound counterintuitive, but when I go through the explanation a bit more, you'll see precisely what I mean. What I had to do with him, because he was never putting the dimmer switch on between deliveries. So his problem was one where he was almost on alert whether the ball was being delivered or not. So what I had him doing, I had to structure his whole strategy between deliveries so that he was attending to certain things rather than getting busy and contaminating himself with thoughts that weren't helpful. So I gave him a very simple, applicable technique to interrupt that absorption. I mean, I'm sure you will know as a cricketer yourself of great repute that it's impossible to concentrate, especially over the span of a test innings,
Yes,
for hours and hours and hours. That it will simply drain you in the end. It will get you. You will get out in a silly way as a result of the intensity surrounding you. So if you can learn to switch off via some very structured, practical mechanisms between deliveries, that might actually make what goes on during the delivery a lot better. So where I say he was concentrating too much, there was too much intensity between balls, too many thoughts, and I had to interrupt that process to make sure that he concentrated at various times, and it worked.
Yeah, I can relate so much to what you're saying, Richard. I used to have this habit of, whenever I was at the non-striker's end, I used to just put off the Velcro, off the glove, so that it was just like a kind of switch off for me, just put the Velcro off and let the gloves loose. And then when I used to just before facing, I'll put the Velcro on. It's like, okay, game on. I have to start concentrating, like a switch on and switch off. You can totally relate to what you're saying, Richard. Richard, my next question is about mind skills training or mental training, and there is sports psychology. These are our perception from M4. We have a certain set of guidelines to what we think is mind skills training and sports psychology. But what is your perception? Are they two different, or one is part of another? Can you throw some light on that?
I think they can be used interchangeably. I would probably say that mind skills are more generic in that you probably want to term those as keeping yourself well off the field to play well on it. So if you want to look generically at mind skills, that's an umbrella term, I guess, for that. Mind skills applied to the arena are specific, focused, attentive strategies which are going to make you perform better on the field. So you feel good off the field, and then you have a strategy to perform well on the field. So whilst the terms can be used interchangeably, I actually like mental skills as opposed to psychology, because psychology in the past has been burdened by a certain connotation. And I think if I go back to the points I made in the previous question you asked, I think it's very useful to get mental skills into a team environment. If we say, look, this is just another tool in the armory of getting better and developing as a performer. It's not something that you have to be struggling with to consult. It's something that actually can be proactively setting you up so that actually problems on the field might not occur. So I put it in one of the chapters for a book I wrote, but there's a proactive and a reactive. And the proactive simply would be setting yourself up to perform in the best way possible. And the reactive is dealing with things as they occur in the best way possible. I would always like to embed a proactive approach so that you might not get so much of the reactive occurring. But some of the things on the field of play that I've attended to, let's just think off the top of my head, the ability to focus on what's relevant, the ability to tune out the irrelevant, people having a set reaction that they're comfortable with when they make a mistake, for example. Another one might be in the example I gave before, to conserve energy so that you are, again, attending to the bowler at certain points. Applying your own rhythm so that you feel you're in the right headspace whilst you're out on the pitch. And an all-encompassing term that I've borrowed from the All Blacks is anything that is going to happen on the field of play, you want to have thought about it off the field of play before it occurs. So everything that you can do to be foreseeable and predictive about some of the scenarios that you're going to be involved with, you should really be off the field thinking about them. And I think that's a very good principle to espouse to any young or any elite performer, anyone. Just say anyone.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for that elaborate answer, Richard. So a sports psychologist is very much capable of equipping a player with these kind of strategies, is what you're saying, right? Like dealing with these problems, probably if it's fear of failure or anxiety or the expectations, whatever. I think a sports psychologist, you say, is very much capable of equipping with the tools the player can use on the field of play.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give you a bite-sized example, I'll go back to the cricketer that I was talking about before, who was consumed all the time and he needn't be. So I helped structure him on the pitch. And I just said to him, look, why don't you gravitate your game around 3 points of focus in terms of your delivery strategy? So I wanted him to focus once when the bowler's at the top of his mark, once when the bowler's halfway through the run-up, and the other time was when the ball is actually being delivered, when it's being bowled. So rather than have him track the ball all the way in the bowler's hand, it was better for him to veer towards those 3 points. And that's just another example of strategy. And again, there's not much about motivational speaking there. It's giving practical, applicable information to make a player and give a framework to make a player better on the field of play under pressure.
Yeah, that's how we like it as well. Like sportsmen, we don't like elaborate, readings and all that. We just, that's what we like. Simple, small things, like you said, bite-sized things that we can process, internalize, and then execute. Of course, my this question has two parts, Richard. I know I'm
Sure.
going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here as well.
Yep.
Sports psychology basically is still considered kind of a taboo. I think everywhere, even especially in India as well, people are little bit still reluctant, to come out that they are actually working with a sports psychologist, which is actually a really good thing. So we feel at M4 that probably people should announce, people should tell, I'm working with a personal trainer, I'm getting stronger, I'm working with a coach, my game is getting better, I'm working with a sports psychologist, my mental framework is getting better. So I think that people should be more open about it. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I think athletes would have a tendency to be more open to it if, in reference to my previous points, it was embedded into the complete training strategy of a team. I think they're then more inclined to say, oh, that guy, he's just part of our bubble. He's just part of our development. He's just part of our performance enhancement. So if it's seen that way, I think that then takes some of the taboo away. And going back to what I said before about connotation as well, it takes that away because all you are is almost a technical stroke mental coach. So rather than perhaps call it sports psychology, just call it mental skills or mental facilitation or mental strategy,
Yeah,
operation, something like that. And I think then people start to try and look into what it is rather than their preperception of what it is, which again has been crafted by many media examples of what it actually isn't. So I think it's important to break that taboo via things that we as practitioners in the industry to do, can messages we can espouse. I think to say it's a more strategic approach, a nuanced approach to working with each individual to develop them. That doesn't make it then unpalatable, and you take away the man in white coat syndrome, which is sometimes put around the term psychology. So I think it's just an integration problem based on a traditionally held perception. But it's
yeah,
interesting you've raised this question because in my working career, and I've written this in various places, I've come across many coaches, many players, and you will be struck by the paucity of those players who actually know what it really is in reality versus the traditionally held perception. Even in sports, it still hasn't permeated the idea that this is strategic, that this is going to performance enhance, rather than it's a motivational speech designed to rouse you up for one performance and then the psych goes away and then is seen when you need him next, or her. It's really, I was really surprised that people still did not have a good appraisal or a recognition of what it actually was. And I guess part of things like this is to conscientize people towards the fact that it can be so different to what they thought. And maybe it isn't what they presupposed it to be. So let's hope that the message via M4 and things like this get it out there that it is actually can be very different.
yes. Of course, Richard. Thanks. And this, my next question is around customization,
Yeah.
Richard. So you told me before in our interaction that every program should be customized, according to
Yes.
the individual needs of a player or a team as well. Do you think the sports psychologist should also be selected according to the, to different needs of the individual or the players? According to his background or where he comes from, the sport he plays, the race, the culture, whatever it might be. Do you think different sports psychologists might be able to deal with different athletes in a better way?
It's a very, very good question, a very interesting one to ponder. And as you were talking there, I was thinking, is it good to match a sports psychologist or a mental skills coach with an athlete from the same kind of environment, country, nationality, etc.? In some ways, yes. But in some ways, it might actually widen the athlete's scope and realm if they deal with somebody outside of their own culture, because we all are sometimes guilty of presupposing our own conditions, and I think it might break that bubble in some ways. So I think it might help to actually go cross-culturally in some ways. However, the absolute constituent of any relationship is rapport. And if the individual psych or mental skills coach is good at rapport, it's their job to tap into whoever they deal with. And I've said this in many interviews as well, just to illustrate this question. In a working day last year, I spent the morning at Lord's, which, as you know, is a very lovely, genteel environment in which to work, with a cricketer. And I was working with them in the nets, and we were going through various things. In the afternoon, I went across London to go to the house of a footballer who lives in young footballer who lives in a very, very impoverished situation. Oh, okay. Now, it's my job to both tap into that environment over there at Lord's and that environment there, which is effectively a ghetto. And it's about, how do I build personal bridges with each individual? Now, unless I can be agile to their circumstances and the cultural facets that they bring to me, I feel that I'm not good enough at my job. So I've prided myself on building rapport with whoever I come into contact with. And I feel it's so, so important to acknowledge that some athletes have come from various different backgrounds, and therefore I need to build a rapport in maybe a slightly different way. And I think that's key to the success of any practitioner. So regardless of culture, there has to be a rapport. Otherwise, there is nothing happening. There's nothing going to be happening.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I think it is the onus is on the sports psychologist to actually break the ice and build the trust of the athlete. Like you mentioned previously in your step one, right? The process one is to just break the ice and get into the mind of the athlete.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Richard, for patiently answering our questions. You've been brilliant. Of course, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge for us to be gained from a leading sports psychologist, Mr. Richard Dean from the United Kingdom. Thanks a lot for watching these guys. You can click the subscribe button and watch many more videos from M4. Thanks for watching once again.